Hello and welcome to another Aegis Accounting podcast. It's been a while. Today we're looking at coronavirus, past, present and future. We're looking at marketing and how you do that about now, and what opportunities might be available in this kind of an odd time for small businesses. That's all coming up, but first here's a little bit about who we are and what we do in case you've not heard of us before. Here it comes. We're Aegis Accounting and you're busy. So we think that you should let us take care of HMRC and Companies House and all of that wonderful compliance stuff while you focus on growing your business. That's our mission. And the way that we do that is we invite you to open a modern business current account with one of the proper fintech challenger banks, and we make sure that gives us all the data we need automatically to do whatever we need month by month. Most of the time we leave you alone, and sometimes we've got a few questions to make sure we're doing the right thing. Between that and the Bing counter, the first ever way to record sales, expenses and mileage just by talking to your smartphone, that can handle cash and journeys, and between those two things we'll have everything we need to automatically deal with your compliance. But that's not all, because we will month by month let you know what you'll owe, so you can save as you go. There's a rhyme there, it's got to be good if it rhymes. So take a look at the packages on our website if that's interesting to you. There's a Go package for sole traders, it's £49 per month. There's a Grow package for limited companies, it's £99 per month. And if you've got any more complicated requirements, take a look. There's a Pro package there, which, well, it isn't a package. Basically, send us a message and we'll talk to you. Now, back to the podcast. Right, so it's crazy sort of time with all the things that are going on. You haven't heard from us, if you're a regular listener or watcher of our podcast, for quite a while now. That's not because coronavirus took out our business, luckily, but it is because of the effect of coronavirus on the most obvious thing that can happen to a parent in that time, childcare. We basically had our kids at home and then rolled into summer holidays with kids at home. There's two businesses operating out of our home, this place where I do all of this, and it's made it pretty tricky to carry on with some of the things that we've been doing in our business that I'm excited to get back to, like this podcast and other marketing activities. Pulling the foot off the gas when it comes to marketing in this kind of a time is not usually a good idea, but when you don't have the time at all to do it, it's the thing to go. We've been looking after our existing clients as much as we can instead, and perhaps you've learned of this podcast through those channels. If not, then it'll be news to you. We have been doing an always up-to-date guidance page on what's available in terms of support for small business and the self-employed throughout coronavirus, and we've been operating a mailing list and letting our clients know, letting the people on the mailing list know when we get news about what has changed, what new support there is, and all that sort of stuff. So rolling into it, the first item, coronavirus. It is the thing that has hit us all so hard this year. It's going to be what 2020 is remembered for, and I'm surrounded by bits of paper. If you're watching, I'm referring to them. I've got lots of bits and pieces. I've got my tablet next to me. I've written some notes down to try and remember the things that are important to say about coronavirus. I want to talk about past, present, and future. And with regard to the past, there was a crisis unfurling with coronavirus when it first hit. There were restrictions introduced that were a surprise to most people and most small businesses. No one really planned ahead and expected any of those restrictions to be placed upon us. And there was at the same time a whole load of support to try and help us to get through that. Each of those things required material changes to our business. So up until now, we've all been having to really change how we do business, how we actually operate day to day. And we also had the effect of something I talked about in a previous podcast. Counterparty risks, that is, the risks that our suppliers face, the risks that your clients face, the risks that your customers face, all those people, all those interactions, all those relationships that you have that you depend upon for your business. They all had risks too, and many of them were maturing, that is, becoming major issues and affecting them, and that's affecting you. And so that bit that we spoke about back then about counterparty risks and trying to keep a tab on those, maybe having some direct conversations with people as to, what do you think is going to happen with you and your business amid coronavirus, might have been some useful conversations to have. If you didn't have those, and you might have had some nasty surprises from suppliers not being able to supply out of the blue, clients going away and all that sort of stuff. We also, of course, as I said, we had the childcare issues. All parents were suddenly lumbered with the kids, and that makes working really tricky. So you have staff that need to be furloughed, essentially, because that's really the only option. It's not like they can work and have their children on their lap at the same time. Some work can be done a bit like that, and some work is wholly unsuitable. So that's been a major thing. Also, those people without normal paid childcare environments also may not have had grandparents as childcare, because the grandparents may have been self-isolating or what's the phrase, cocooning or something like that. I can't even remember what the word is, but they were having to go into a stricter form of self-isolation because they were vulnerable, and that has made it very tricky, I think, for parents, especially parents who are also small business owners, to get through this kind of time. That's how things have unfolded until now, but, where are we now? So we've got this so-called new normal. Support that the restrictions are tapering off, as is the support for those restrictions. We have an increased dependency on remote working, so there's lots of people doing that, and there is obviously social distancing requirements that most of our businesses are having to deal with. Maybe yours doesn't, maybe yours has always been remote, but lots of businesses have to deal with those new things. The counterparty risks element, they're still continuing to mature. Just because the situation feels perhaps a little bit more stable now, doesn't necessarily mean that it's easy and straightforward for all of the people that you're dealing with day to day. So you still should keep an eye on that. Keep in touch with your suppliers and clients and understand how they're doing, if they're doing okay or if they have new problems. For all you know, one of their key employees may have caught coronavirus and requiring half their business to self-isolate. This can be something that can continue to happen for a period of time. So do keep a tab on counterparty risk as best you can. I'm not saying that's easy, but it continues to be a thing that's risky. These things are happening all around us still. There is a recession confirmed. We know it's one of the deepest recessions since records began, but I don't think anyone's really expecting this to be the same as, say, the credit crunch in 2008. This is not a structural recession. This is an impact upon the economy from something outside the economy, just normal people's health and doing the right thing for people. I think consumer confidence is highly likely to bounce back much more quickly. Unless an individual has been significantly, currently financially impacted by coronavirus to the point that they can't do their normal consuming, then consumption behaviours are going to continue sort of normal. And that's a significant part of the economy. So yes, there'll be changes. Some of those will be sort of semi-permanent, like a new normal, something to adapt your business to. For example, many people will be remote working. That may mean reduced footfall in areas in front of shops, for example, and these are going to be important things you need to think about. But this recession, I think, is going to feel different, and hopefully, I think, with luck, the measures that have been put in place so far should enable everyone to bounce back as quickly as possible. But of course, there will still be ongoing effects. So on to the future then. That's where things are now. What's in the future? Well, there is still the availability, although I'm sure there is a deadline on it somewhere. I don't know what the deadline is, but it's not going to go on forever. But there are still CBILS and bounce back loans available. That is essentially the cheapest money you're ever going to find, and there's no penalty for repaying early. If you haven't applied for one and you're eligible, apply for one, take the money, decide what to do with it later, assuming you can be responsible enough not to throw the money down the drain if you get it. Think about it having to return 2.5% because that's the interest rate. If you can do anything with that money that will get you more than that, then there you go. Perhaps, and the restriction for example, that's the bounce back loan I was talking about. The restriction on the bounce back loan usage is essentially nil. So even if you're a small business, you take it and you use it to offset your hired purchase on your car that may be 4 or 5%. That's still a positive use of the money. You're making saving. So it makes sense to take a bounce back loan. That doesn't mean it's easy to do. There's a lot of process, but it's worth it. This is the cheapest source of capital you're going to see in your lifetime, almost without doubt. So take it. There's no penalty if you don't use it and you want to give it back. That's a different message to what I've said previously. I've said be careful of loans. They're not always a good idea. If your business isn't viable, then why get a loan? If your business was in trouble going into coronavirus, I expect it's been massively hammered throughout, and perhaps it's not such a good idea. But if your business is healthy enough, has every chance of continuing and succeeding, it's a bit of a no-brainer to get that level of capital introduction into your business at that low rate of interest and no repayments for the first year, no penalty for repaying it if it turns out you don't need it. I think really it's a no-brainer, and I'll advise you to do it. That's my personal feeling about it. Make your own decision. That's what I think. The other thing in the future that I think we need to think about, and I think maybe more of a trouble, is what I call the short-term memory of the easily manipulable public. And what I mean is that we've got a bit of a love affair of rage headlines, rage-inducing headlines. Something like which word is going to be capitalized? That's the Daily Express's continual editorial decision. Which word shall we capitalize to maximize the rage response to our headline? We seem to be enjoying that as a general public, becoming outraged by stuff. We use headlines like that to give us opinions that we don't have any particular justification for other than I read a headline. So people are generally quite easily manipulated into holding opinions that they have no actual justification for. It's an unfortunate fact of modern life. Maybe it's not particularly modern, but that's the truth about how things are. We also have a situation where politicians are not particularly easily held accountable. People don't seem to change their vote, even if politicians have not done the things they've promised. In fact, they don't even promise very much anymore. So we have a bit of a situation that during the pandemic, when the measures were announced, the Chancellor already took a bit of a pot shot at those who are, say, self-employed or in limited companies and pay different rates into the system. And I'm sure that he was pointing to national insurance contributions, which are different between, say, a limited company director and someone who's employed according to how they set up their limited company, which is a relatively standard thing that us as accountants might set up for someone who is the proprietor, director, and the person who does the work within their limited company business, ignoring IR35 effects and those bits, which basically means that the government says you can't do that because you're just pretending when you're actually just an employee. If you're out of that system, you're a genuine business, then you pay yourself in ways that are tax efficient. And one of the ways you do that is you might pay yourself a salary that is at what's called the secondary threshold, which means that you don't pay any employer's national insurance contribution. That's a tax on employment that employers have to pay for everyone that they pay over a certain amount. They have to pay a chunk to the government. And you don't have to do that, and also the employee doesn't have to pay any national insurance either, because that's above their threshold, below their threshold for doing so. But they get the benefits of paying. They get the record that says that they have a national insurance record, which means that they'll be able to get a maximum state pension if they do that. I think it's for more than something like 10 continuous years or 10 years and something along those lines. But it's what we tend to encourage you to do, because it's a tax efficient way of paying yourself, and you pay the rest in dividends, because dividend rate of tax is far lower than the 20% rate of income tax. So that's a normal thing that's done, and I think that the idea is to somehow want to change that. But of course, what's crazy about that, and the way that it was delivered, is it was delivered during a pandemic, as if to say there's this terrible thing happening. Why don't we point to this group of people and have the general public be suspicious of them? That's not welcome. There's also the small issue of the fact that the limited company directors didn't make the tax rules. The governments do. Successive governments make tax rules. So if you don't like how it is, it's not our fault. There's also the major problem that it's not true that we all get the same benefit out of the system, which I think was the premise. Because we don't all get the same national insurance benefits. We can't all claim the same national insurance benefits. For example, if you're self-employed, I think there's a secondary state pension that you don't get because you're self-employed. You're not in PAYE. Well, if we're going to be paying the same, I assume you're suggesting we'll be having the same benefits. Otherwise, that's a bit pointless. So that was relatively unwelcome, but I think that attitude of helping with one hand and then being prepared to point the finger and get some rage headlines written so that people don't like a certain group of people is unfortunately a risk that we're going to be facing for some time. We already have a case where, I saw this in the news, there was a pressure group who were trying to get coronavirus loan borrowers outed, as in named on a list, and the justification I think was, well, the taxpayer is backing this. Well, no, the taxpayer isn't backing it. The taxpayer is the risk is on the taxpayer of, I think it's 80%. The risk is on the taxpayer, but they're not backing it. It's the banks who loan, the banks who get the percentage. It's just that the government has said that it will act. It's almost like acting as guarantor, but you'd have to be unable to repay it in order for that to happen. So that's only business. It seems a little bit pointing the finger already at business owners who are taking the advice. Now remember, this is what I mean about short memories. Remember back, everyone was being told that it's a terrible thing, and it was a terrible thing, and a terrible surprise, more to the point, to everybody. There was a big change required to how we do things in the country. There's a big change required to business, and there was the attitude, the literal words of whatever it takes. And that was the attitude. Any way we can push money at people to help them, the better. And I think they made my opinion is that they made absolutely the right choice to go straight to the very bottom, make sure that universal credit was more generous, make sure that there was the furlough scheme so that people weren't made redundant, didn't lose their jobs, but it's the people who are getting it rather than businesses being given money and hoping that it will trickle down. It was very restricted and directed to those people. Likewise with the self-employed income support scheme grant, although I still don't understand why there are such disparities between the two. If you're an employee, say a CEO of business that's had to almost shut down entirely, it doesn't matter that you are earning 80k, you can still have 80% of 2,500 a month. Whereas if you were in the same business but you were self-employed, then you would not be able to get anything because you had more than 50,000 earnings for the 3 years. Nothing at all. I don't understand that disparity or what the logic behind it is. Neither did the Treasury Select Committee, which had a massive piece on it, constantly applying some pressure to say why are we deliberately missing out these people. It's not like we don't know. It's not like you didn't think about it, because we constantly telling you who's missing. But they have no interest in doing anything more to it. The reply from the Chancellor was pretty blunt. No, it's not happening. That's it. So if you fell through the cracks, I'm sorry, you'll just have to blame Rishi. No one else. Right. Let's come down to the next part. So we're talking about the future of coronavirus. The short memory of manipulable public. I am thinking that there's this just ongoing risk to be aware of, that we may have to justify and direct people to remember how sudden and disruptive this was to business, and there's genuine need for things like CBILS and bounce back loans to protect business, to protect jobs, to protect businesses' role in the economy, supporting the jobs of people in other businesses. I mean, people forget the whole secondary network effects of what happens when a business goes away. Well, that means a supplier and a client has gone away from two other businesses. The problems are systemic, which is why I really commend the effort, at least, to collect all of these small businesses into some kind of support scheme. But the ongoing thing that I think you must think about most is there's a focus issue. You're thinking about coronavirus. You're not thinking about Brexit, perhaps. And we're about to fall off a cliff edge in January. The chance for no deal Brexit is incredibly high. You must be preparing for it. If you are not preparing for it, there will be a shock to your business. I'm not saying you know exactly how to prepare for it, but there must be preparation somehow. Again, think about your counterparties. Do you have suppliers that are unduly exposed to import-export fees? That kind of thing. Because of course tariffs is the major issue here, and a lot of people of course don't understand them. So go find a video that helps educate you on how tariffs are going to work after Brexit. If you're a small business to the point where you're small enough not to have really thought about it in any depth yet, go get educated on what World Trade Organization rules are going to mean, how that's going to affect your business, how it's going to affect your suppliers and your clients. They're going to have to push their prices up. If a tariff is placed upon another country's imports, that means that it's the business in the UK that's got to pay those tariffs. So it's the punishment's here. It's like the fact that you're buying from somewhere else and they have a tariff on it means you are going to have to pay extra. So yeah, do go and take a look. It's there are plenty of 5-minute videos. Go find one that breaks it down. What's the one that I quite liked? Can't remember its name. It'll come back to me. I'll put a link in the description. But they've got a pretty good, simple breakdown of what it would mean. It can be helpful to look at. The other ongoing risk. I saw a wonderful cartoon. It was like a little tidal wave representing coronavirus. Behind it, a much bigger one representing Brexit. And behind that, the vastness of climate change. There's going to be some massive changes to the structure of the world economy due to us having to do stuff to do with climate change. The shape of that is entirely unknown as well. It's not. I don't think it's clear. So it could be things like governments introducing levies over the coming years on certain maybe poor energy usage. It could be that kind of thing. Or it could be introducing incentives, as simple as introducing incentives for putting good insulation in your house and stuff like that. I don't know, but there will be movement on that again once the two major immediate things have come to pass, which is dealing with coronavirus and the fallout, and dealing with Brexit and how that's going to affect us all. Then that will return to be something that gets considered. It's a public interest. I don't think it's something that's attracting an awful lot of corporate pressure on it, unlike Brexit, for example. But there is public interest, and the public who are interested seem to be pretty active. So we may end up with enough pressure from from the electorate that something does have to happen that really affects businesses. So let's think about it. Maybe after we've worried about Brexit, and certainly after we've worried about coronavirus. But those are things happening in the future that I just wanted to talk about. That's coronavirus. Coronavirus for us has meant that our past up until now has been looking after kids and not being able to do an awful lot of the marketing stuff like this podcast, which I'm so eager and pleased to be back doing. And we've just had to focus on supporting our clients as best we can, and getting help out as to how to make use of all these schemes. Speaking of which, there's more coming up on one key addition to that scheme, the Kickstart Scheme, which is really interesting, being paid to employ someone between 16 and 24 years old on universal credit at risk of never entering the workforce. The government could pay you to employ that person for 6 months. That's free labour. I quite like that idea. More about that coming up, but first, a very short thing on marketing. Probably the worst thing I did during coronavirus was drop marketing, but I had to. It was not because I didn't have the money to do some advertising. Probably could have done it. I did. It's focus. I did not have the capability to focus on marketing because I was focusing on 2 children fighting behind me, throwing teddy bears at each other and moving them around, and then getting back to helping a client. Distraction upon distraction upon distraction means that running a marketing campaign, can be really tricky. So I'm massively looking forward to them going back to school. I'm recording this on the Friday, the last working day before they go back off to school, and I couldn't be more relieved. I love my children dearly, but I also need to work. So I am very much looking forward to that. It also means I can get back into good working habits rather than firefighting and making sure that I'm really looking after our existing clients. I can do those things and do good sales and marketing exercises so that we can get some new clients, which is something we'd really like to do now that people are getting back into business, and we've had sign up some new clients over the past couple of months, which is great. It really does prove to us that businesses really are bouncing back quickly. It does give me great confidence when I talk about recession and consumer confidence. I know that small business confidence seems to be fairly high. I think lots of people are choosing to not change their, to take advantage of what you can take advantage of out of this, and to grow out of coronavirus. I think that really should be the tagline for this: grow out of coronavirus. But the marketing thing we did have to drop. However, I did find a great podcast. So here's where I refer you to someone else who's got some great content. I stumbled across a chap called James Sinclair, who gets £12 off from me every month anyway, because he runs and owns the Party Man group, which my daughter and my son quite enjoy going to. Maybe not right now, because I'm not sure that soft play is the greatest thing for them. But amid the pandemic. But I have had no good podcast links for small business in the UK. I've had some good general small business links, but mostly they've been in the US. And something about it doesn't translate over. Loads of it does. Loads of it translates really well. Marketing style is different in the UK to the US, but not vastly, but it is different. It's things like good structures, actual local UK schemes, and availability of opportunities for business that are to do with this economy in this country. There's far more of that in his podcast. He's got a fantastic podcast that I've been listening to them. Lots of phone calls from genuine small businesses with problems, and he really does coach them to it live right there. My alternative previous one, which was Gary V, is most of his content is motivational stuff. It's great for some. I'm not particularly interested in it. I really liked when he did what he called daily digital deep dives, which he sits in a room with 5 or 6 small businesses and goes around them, coaching them on their issues. That was really valuable content, but of course it is US specific. So when they get into things like employment law or tax breaks or good structures for your company, that's where it sort of falls down a bit, because that isn't relevant to the UK. It's great to find what's in the UK, but definitely they're both good. Go look at both. Go find Daily Digital Deep Dives. I don't think they're done very often by Gary Vee, but I do quite like listening to it. Definitely go and have a look at James Sinclair. One of the things that he was saying, and why that's relevant to the marketing part of this podcast, is what he was suggesting is that if you own your business, you should be spending 80% of your time on sales, marketing, and otherwise getting new business and growing, and only 20% on doing the operations. Which means that you should be looking, if it's most business owners have it the other way around, and you should be looking to get people in to do operational stuff. The way you put it best was, if you put two adverts in the paper, and one was for someone that can get 100 grand of new business through the door over the next 12 months versus someone who can organise your emails, has good organisational skills, and can make sure that the operations of your business functionally work and administer them, we know which one of those is easier to hire for. So perhaps it would make more sense in your business if you spent your time doing your sales and marketing, and if you outsourced your operations or hired in people, more to the point, to do some of your operations work. Which brings me nicely onto the Kickstart scheme, because that's one of the key opportunities of the moment. The Kickstart scheme. So I've got my tablet here. I'm looking at the official gov.uk listing. They've got a wonderful logo. I wonder how much that cost. As part of the government's plan for jobs, a new £2 billion Kickstart scheme will create hundreds of thousands of new, fully subsidised jobs for young people across the country. The 6-month placements are open to those aged 16 to 24 who are claiming universal credit and at risk of long-term unemployment. They'll be available across a range of different sectors in England, Scotland and Wales. The first placements are likely to be available from November. There'll be also extra funding to support young people to build their experience, help them move into sustained employment after they've completed their Kickstart funded job. Employers will receive funding for 100% of the relevant national minimum wage for 25 hours a week, plus associated employer national insurance contributions and employer minimum auto-enrolment pension contributions. So they really are fully funding the ability to hire young people at risk of never entering the workforce. I think that's great. I think that's a fantastic idea. We first heard about it in July. This is the first time I've been able to talk about it on the podcast, but we heard about it in July, and we have been waiting on tenterhooks for give me details, when can I do it? There are in fact people who are putting out their adverts already. The Department for Work and Pensions told them to take down their adverts. Employers have been clamouring to get this free labour, because there's plenty. This is entirely consistent with the idea of outsourcing your easy operations and administration work to someone new, and bring someone new into the business so that you can focus on growing, and you'll easily, if your business is well structured, be boosting your revenue to the tune of what you're going to be paying them. But you're going to have 6 months free start because it's going to be paid for by the government. I think it's an absolute no-brainer. But the devil is in the detail. As over the last couple of days, it's become clear how this scheme is going to be administered. If I go to this guidance page, check if you can apply for a grant through the Kickstart scheme. It says, it tells us all what you can do again, but it also says an extra thing here. There is also £1,500 per job placement available for setup costs, support and training. So they really are helping you to get your desk in position, get your training materials ready, and actually spend time bringing them up to speed. The intention is not that they need extensive training, so it has to be relatively on-the-job stuff. That's sort of the point here. The job placement should support the participants to develop the skills and experience they need to work after completing the scheme. Applications must be for a minimum of 30 job placements. 30? We're a family business with 3 currently in the business. I want 1. 30? It does say, to give it credit, before the outrage, as did I verbally capitalise one of the parts of the sentence in a Daily Express style? I think I might have done. Before the rage hits, there is a way around it. but it is an unnecessary, an unwelcome complexity if you're a small business. If you're unable to offer this many job placements, you can partner with other organisations to reach the minimum number. Okay, so there's an extra hurdle for small businesses. If you are a representative applying on behalf of a group of employers, you can get £300 of funding to support with the associated administrative costs of bringing together these employers. Kickstart is not an apprenticeship, but participants may move on to an apprenticeship at any time during or after their job placement. So basically, you've got to give them 6 months of work, you've got to train them up, you've got to leave them better than you found them, which I think is a great thing to do anyway. And you don't necessarily have to have a job or apprenticeship for them afterwards, but let's face it, you may well do. Who can apply for funding? Any organisation, regardless of size, can apply for funding. The job placements must be for new jobs. You can't kick anyone else out to do it. You can't replace existing or planned vacancies. I don't know how they would know if you had a planned vacancy and then decided that you were going to use this scheme. Anyway, you cannot cause existing employees or contractors to lose or reduce their employment. This is reasonable. Okay, and the roles must be a minimum of 25 hours a week for 6 months, paid at least the national minimum wage for their age group, should not require people to undertake extensive training before they begin the job placement. That's what I mean. It's sort of something that should be fairly on the job. I mean, bear in mind these people are between 16 and 24. They're at risk of never entering the workforce. That means that they're fairly unskilled. So that doesn't mean that they don't have great potential, but you're going to have to build that by working with them. Each application should include how you will help the participants to develop their skills and experience, including support to look for long-term work, career advice, setting goals, support with CV and interview preparations, supporting the participant with basic skills such as attendance, timekeeping, and teamwork. Yes, they are young and at risk of never entering the workforce. It's still free labour. Treat them well and help to grow them, and this seems like an ideal thing. Much like the bounce back loan, however many hurdles are between you and doing this, this is a no-brainer. Free labour for 6 months, you should do it. How you do it will be harder if you're not big. I think there was a quote out from the chair of the Federation of Small Businesses, who was saying how disappointing it is that this is not aimed at small employers well enough because of this 30 person issue. But let's have a look at the facts. This is where my printouts in front of me help. A sip of my drink before we go into that. This document, Business Statistics, is a House of Commons library document. It's a briefing paper. It was completed on the 31st of July 2020. This is what they think business is. It is a picture of Canary Wharf. I think that reflects all you need to know about the government. They really do think about bigger businesses primarily and smaller businesses later on, because that could have been a high street. But instead they've chosen Canary Wharf. They've chosen to show, the only logo that I can see on here clearly is HSBC. And HSBC, according to their website, has 40,000 people in the UK. It's not very many people in the UK for a giant business, is it? Never mind. Let's have a look at the details. They've got some interesting things in here. Businesses by size, there are 5 as of 2019, which I assume must be the 2019 tax year. I haven't seen that. So I'll go with these figures anyway for now, rather than, I'm sure they've grown. But it said 5.8, or rounding to 5.9 million businesses in the UK. 5.9 million businesses. The number of those that are small also rounds to 5.9. There are that few large businesses. There are 8,000 large businesses. This scheme has been designed to most easily serve the needs of 8,000 large employers with more than 250 employees, large businesses. 8,000 on here. That's 8,000 who will find it easy to move some people around, have someone work as a manager, and to get 30 plus extra people into their workforce for free, paid for by the government, to compete with smaller businesses who may not bother with the hurdles of getting together as a group to hire 30 at once. I really encourage you to do it anyway if you're small. Find a way to become part of this part of a group, because 5.86 versus 5.868, it's just ridiculous. And 5.6 million of those businesses are micro businesses with less than 10 employees. There is no way that they're going to grow to 4 times their size or more. So these businesses will not be hiring 30 more. Mostly. I say mostly because, of course, it could be true that some of these are sales organisations with a significant sales component who may start an in-house sales team of 30 and over the period after 6 months decide who was good and keep them on, and who wasn't bad, they don't get to stay. I can imagine that you're going to get an awful lot more calls from telesales over the next year or so, because to get over that barrier, I would hire a 30-person sales team. All total trainees. I remember starting out in telesales. There's no skills required. You just pick up the phone and start. Read the script. That's how you do it. So maybe that's an opportunity for you if you can get 30 people in the room, but you may have to justify in your grant application that you can really do that when there's only 10 of you. That may make your grant application not really very successful. I don't know. I don't know enough about the scheme to tell. But regardless, 96% of the businesses in the UK have fewer than 10 employees. They are going to have to club together in order to make applications to get this to work. And so what they suggest is they have a list of email addresses, all at the DWP, for different regions of the UK, such as South East, etc., etc. Like regions like that. Scotland gets one email address, and you need to email them for them to direct you to where you may find a representative that can represent the interests of more than one employer, and that's going to be the only route. And I don't know how they're going to cope with 5.9 million emails over the coming week, but do it anyway. They've said they're going to do it. Find that link and email to them. Again, I'll put a link in the description, and ask, who do I talk to in order to get free labour? Thank you very much. Of course, assuming you can grow them nicely and do a good job, but I'm sure you can. That is that. What else am I going to say? There's 19 local authorities in the South East region. I'm sat here in Eastleigh at the moment, near Southampton. There's one email address that will handle Brighton and Hove, Bracknell Forest, Buckinghamshire, East Sussex, Hampshire, Isle of Wight, Kent, Medway, Milton Keynes, Oxfordshire, Portsmouth, Reading, Slough, Southampton, Surrey, West Berkshire, West Sussex, Windsor, and Maidenhead and Wokingham. Every single business in there who cannot hire 30 at once will have to send an email to this South East at DWP email address and ask who to talk to. They have suggested that it could be a local chamber of commerce or a local authority, but I guarantee if I call my local authority, they won't have a clue. They are very unlikely to have been briefed by national government to expect phone calls asking from employers of less than 30 already how to become part of this scheme. But that is what you're going to need to do. You're going to need to get in contact with these people. You need to find out how to team up if hiring less than 30 of these young people who are at risk of never entering the workforce is something you want to do. And I think you should, because it's free labour. But that's what I think. It's up to you. That's probably the biggest opportunity at the moment, but there are 2 more. One, back to marketing. The current cost of advertising, a particular online pay-per-click, is lower for many sectors now than it would normally be. If you've already got a budget, or if you've done it before, re-look into that. You could be getting more bang for your buck than you used to get. This is taken fresh out of James Sinclair's podcast. Thank you for that. They are looking to pick up businesses. I think, what is it he said? He had a great way of putting it. People who lack the enjoyment or enthusiasm or energy of their business that they once had. And this is the time when they think they've had enough and they want to get rid of it. But otherwise, the business is in relatively good shape and could be grown. There will be people looking to sell their business. Maybe you're an accountant looking to sell your business. Get in contact. It's the kind of thing that will be happening around the country now. There'll be loads of businesses, just people who used to enjoy what they did and maybe were little more than a small family business, and it's working, but maybe they've got a good property portfolio and they've invested their money, and they just don't really want the engine of business as being their responsibility anymore. They want to move on, do other things with their lives, and they're ready to sell it. Now's a good time. That's what happens in recession. That's what entrepreneurs do in a recession. They pick up opportunities like this. You may find that you can grow by picking up someone nearby. So maybe start making some phone calls. Maybe you already know a business. Maybe you have a competitor. Give them a call. See if they're willing to, if they've had enough through coronavirus and the coming recession. Maybe they're fearful about the coming recession and are wanting to get out of business. There can be opportunity there. So take a look. And there's one last and most obvious opportunity at the moment. If you can actually help people with their new needs amid this pandemic, then you're going to be in demand. The obvious opportunity of making face masks, or as we've been doing, giving people advice on what is available in terms of support for small business and the self-employed. It's there. It's an opportunity. It can be done. So take a good 360 look around. There are going to be opportunities around, and that's the positive message that I wanted to leave you with today on this podcast. It's been a bit of a long one again, but then it has been a bit of a while since I've been able to get in front of the camera and talk at you incessantly for 45 minutes. I will make them short in the future, I promise. Thank you so much for watching or listening on whatever platform that you're doing. If you've managed to get this far through it, then I really commend you. I hope there's been something in there that has been of real value to you and your business. And all I can do now is to ask you to do the obvious. Whatever platform you're on, please press whatever like buttons are available to you. Please review it if you've not done it. Everything you do like that helps us get seen by more people, and we can help more people as a result. And of course, hopefully some people, the audience, will be a small business or solo entrepreneur or self-employed person who does not want to deal with HMRC or Companies House themselves. And that's what we're here for. Take a look at our website. Thanks a lot. I look forward to seeing you or talking to you in the next one. Bye.